Fantastic. Well, I am not Sean. My name is Josh Schaller. I am so happy to be here joining you all today on, of all days, All Saints Day. Just a brief little aside here. So Sean and our family go way back, actually. So my wife, Kara, who's right here. Hi, Kara. She opens a gummy pack. Hi. That was perfect timing. We nailed that. Actually was a youth intern at Sean's dad's church back in St. Louis years and years ago. Now at this point, we're to the point where, like, I don't want to say how many years and years ago. It's amazing how that works, right? So us and Sean's family, the McIntyres, go way back. So we were so happy to be able to be here and worship with you all today and talk about the next generation. I want to give you a little bit of intro about myself, who I am, and I'm sorry for all the Chiefs fans. In just a second here, something is about to come up on the screen here. We have these things growing from the top of our heads, my family, and every Sunday this tends to happen. So in roughly an hour and a half, it might happen again. So I am originally from Appleton, Wisconsin, which is just south of Green Bay, so very, very much a big cheesehead. And then I figured, you know, we're talking Halloween, and so I would show off me and my wife, Thor, who, you know, she moonlights as a mom during the days, but she is actually a real-life Thor in real life. And that is not a tissue box attached to a paper towel roll at all. That is not what that is. So very happy to be here today talking with you all. So I work in the Next Gen office at the Methodist Conference office, along with my boss, Mona Candia and Angel Garcia. We kind of run the gamut of 0 all the way through kind of young adult college age. And so excited to be here and chat with you guys about this today. So as you can see from the cheeseheads, sports are a big part of my life, believe it or not. My wife here is very much on her home turf here, so she went to Ole Miss, which they, you know, won yesterday or whatever. And so this is me. We went to an Ole Miss versus Mizzou game down there in Oxford, Mississippi, and you can see us up there, and you can see how I'm the only one that is wearing a little bit of yellow there. Everyone else is wearing red. And then it's amazing the difference you feel in your heart when you go to a Mizzou game that we did win that one, by the way. I'm sorry again for anybody that watched yesterday. But it's amazing the difference that you feel when you are in a stadium or a place that feels like it was made for you, right? When you're at that Mizzou game and able to, you know, say do all the chants and do all the things, and you just feel comfortable and home and welcome. So what we're going to be talking about today is this feeling, right? Being welcomed into a space, what it's kind of like to be welcomed with open arms, sometimes hugged by strangers, in my case, as was in a couple of these moments at the Mizzou game. So why Next Gen? Why talking about space on All Saints Day? You here at Centralia, like all churches, are trying to discover what's best for the lives of the Next Gen folks in your church. While you have some ideas of what might be and, you know, what's your vision and mission for those individuals, you also have some freedom in creating the kind of DNA of your church. The kind of place you create can either be a place people know that they're welcomed or know that they're not. You're surrounded by young people. I saw some wonderful young people up here. They were in this pew. They were also on top of me a little bit, if you saw that too. But you're also surrounded by people in this community and through local colleges, elementary schools, secondary schools, and a ton of families who need someone to care about them. You as a Christian can be a place of welcome for those young people, that they feel like they're at, you know, Faroe Field and not in Oxford, Mississippi, where, you know, lovely people, but, you know, it's the yellow and gold. That's, you know, that's the colors you need. So that takes us to our scripture for today. Is going to be out of Psalms 78, 1 through 8. And I am going to, we'll read this for you guys here today. Listen, my people, to my teaching. Tilt your ears toward the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a proverb. I'll declare riddles from days long gone, ones that we've heard and learned about, ones that our ancestors told us. We won't hide them from their descendants. We'll tell the next generation all about the praise due the Lord and his strength, the wondrous works God has done. God established a law for Jacob and set up instruction for Israel, ordering our ancestors to teach them to their children. This is so that the next generation and children not yet born will know these things, and so they can rise up and tell their children to put their hope in God, never forgetting God's deeds, but keeping God's commandments. And that's where we're at today. We are talking about that next generation and how we can be building them up. So I want to start kind of with the obvious point here. In order to actually have a faith to pass along, believe it or not, you need to actually have a faith to pass along, right? So I'm glad you're here, right? So today of all days being All Saints' Day, and this is something that I definitely did not look up like 30 seconds before preparing this sermon in any way, shape, or form, but in the Methodist Church, how we kind of define All Saints' Day is this is a day where we celebrate the communion of saints as we remembered the dead, both of the Church Universal and of our local congregations. So, if you caught what I said from the children's sermon amongst the craziness, that means that all of us in here can be considered saints in the Methodist Church. And that all of us also have a story of how we came into that faith and kind of our faith lineage as we can pass this on to the next generation. So the question for us every single day is, we had people pass that faith on to us. Who are we currently passing that faith on to? That they can look back and say, hey, this person was part of our lineage. So with that first point being that we need to have a strong faith to pass on, the second is like it. It takes actual intentional effort to pass along our faith to somebody. It just doesn't happen, right? And in best practices, it helps to know a little bit about that person to connect with them. So I am going to do one of my favorite things, and we're going to chat a little bit about these next generations, because believe it or not, we've got Gen Z and Gen Alpha are upcoming, and if you think that millennials are still kids, well, hi, I am a millennial. I am actually, we are actively having the Gen Alpha kids right now, and so those millennials are no longer the kids. So the two generations kind of that are below millennials, and even millennials tend to get a bad rap these days. It seems like we're really annoyed with them for kind of some of their technology use, or kind of have an utter lack for, of appreciation or respect for older generations, or we're dismissive of mental health and the crisis that is, saying, of course you're anxious, get off social media. But I'm also on social media too much, and I would wager that a lot of people in this room are also on social media too much. There's something happening like a week and a half from now that I'm sure we're seeing a lot of things that aren't really great for our mental health right now, right? So us kind of coming from that place of like, hey, get off social media, it's ruining your lives, doing all these things, coming down on them. To be blunt, it's not really helpful to have that conversation with young people, and here's why, right? As a society, we are starting from a place of not believing the best in them, and one of my favorite quotes about young people these days is actually this one right here. Many young people are so pampered nowadays that they've forgotten that there is such a thing as walking, right? We're online so much, and that was from, I think, oh, actually, wait, hold on. That's the wrong quote. That's from Falkirk Herald. Oh, no, here, go back to that for a second. From 1951. That's actually not from today. That was part of my research. Here, go to the next quote. I might have gotten the next one. So kids these days, they have an attitude on the part of young folk which is best described as grossly thoughtless, rude, and utterly selfish. And that was, of course, from the current... Oh, actually, there's the Hull Daily Mail from 1925. Oh, sorry, I must have, again, gotten the wrong... Go to the next one. I might have had this one right. The free access which many young people have to romance, novels, and plays has poisoned the mind and corrupted the morals of many a promising youth, which, of course, is from, everyone say it together, Reverend Enoch Hitchcock from 1790, right? Okay, one of these has got to be a current one. Here, go to the next one. The beardless youth does not foresee what is useful, squandering his money. And that was, of course, by everybody's favorite, Horace from the, Romans back in the 1st century BC. We have this tendency, if you don't see, all the way back to the 1st century BC, 2,000 plus years ago, where we dog on young people because of whatever reason, whether, they're beardless, which, again, I managed to do it, we're good. But we can get to this point where we are constantly deeming them as worthless, or maybe worse than that, we deem young people as stupid. One of my teammates, Angel Garcia from our office, has this great quote, which is, context leads to empathy. So the more that we know about people, if we can start from a place of empathy, we can reach a point of understanding. And when we understand someone, it creates a point in which we can see both the hard they face and the good in them. So I want to kind of run you guys a little bit through the gamut today of of these two generations that we've got coming up so we can maybe have a little bit of context and a little bit more empathy for them. So our youngest individuals are Gen Alpha. So these are our babies through 6th grade already, which is crazy. There's not a lot of research on them yet, just because the complexity of their answers isn't great for a lot of surveys. The 5 things that we know about Gen Alpha as they're coming up: they are digital. They were born with cell phones. I remember the first time that my oldest Daniel here, hi Daniel. Yep, there he is. He was like watching some video on my phone, and my wife texted me, and he just like, without me even telling him, he just like swiped that notification away and just kept watching, and I was like, wait, what just happened? There's this level of intrinsic, like, they don't know what the world is like before having phones and technology and Nintendo Switches and everything, despite how much I would love that not to be the case. They are very social, not necessarily good at the interaction face-to-face, right? But online, it is very, very prevalent. They are global. I grew up, and I can still, probably, if I really think back, I can still recite exactly what a dial tone sounds like, listening to that modem, as your internet's kicking up. They are at this point where, hey, if you want to know about what's happening in India this second, in any province of India, you can find out right now. You can have friends all along the world thanks to all this connectivity. They are very mobile as well, don't tend to stay in one place, and don't like to be tied down to anything, and they're also very visual. With having that screen right there, you kind of train that brain to be thinking visually, right? And so Gen Alpha's got, these are kind of the 5 qualities that we see in Gen Alpha. The next generation that I want to talk about is our Gen Z, which again, if you think millennials are the kids right now, my goodness, our Gen Z are 6th grade all the way to like 26, 27 years old. We have a lot more research on them, and so I want to dig into some of this with you. First of all, again, just like Gen Alpha, smartphone natives, right? They grew up with these. This is something that they're very used to. Social media natives, they don't know what the world is like, having a day off school, and it's like, I can't talk to my friends today because I am home. Or for me, like, I can't, text with like the T9, where like I can text like 7, like I can click 7 like 3 times to get like an S or whatever, right? Like we are past that. They're also the best educated in the history of the world. More people are in secondary education in this generation than any generation before it. They're also the most ethnically diverse. This is the first group that they kind of pass the threshold of, in the United States, there are more individuals that are not white than individuals that are. And they're also very progressive. So if you see, that's why you see a lot of the people that are voting for Democrats tend to push, trying to get the young vote out, because that generally tends to be the case. Next slide, if you could. Some things that we need to know about as we're talking with young people: only 34% claim to have no religious affiliation at all, which is the highest percent of all time. When you go back to the baby boomers, that number is less than 5%. So we have come a long way in these generations. Only 30% actually attend any sort of religious service. So you might see people that are Gen Z and Gen Alpha saying that like hey, Centralia, or hey, Community UMC is my home church, but they don't actually come, aside from maybe that Creaster season, right? 70% of them, however, do consider themselves spiritual. So if you've ever heard that phrase like, oh, I am a Christian, or like, I believe in God, but I'm not a Christian, because I don't want to affiliate with that, right? You hear that a lot. Next slide for me. In Gen Z also, something important for us all to know, because this is now just kind of normal for us, this is the first generation to go to school every single day and have mandatory active shooter drills. I grew up as a millennial, and like you hear things like Columbine, and that was like something that happened way far away, and it's not something that like, it's not going to happen to us. But every kid that goes into a school has this. And the first time I dropped my kid off at kindergarten in public school, I died a little inside because of this, right? And they have to live with this. They also grew up with COVID. So you'll see a lot of these individuals that I've seen and I've talked to either are taking kind of gap years around college, or kind of are having that like fear of missing out around the fact that, hey, I did not have my correct regular senior year of high school or senior year of college. These years were taken from me. And so there's that feeling of loss. And they're also seeing this world that is very divisive and polarized. Can I get an amen on that one, right? Like everything is either the best or the worst. Everything is either this or this. You are either evil or you are saintly, and there is no in between. And that's the world that they're seeing right now. When we talk about mental health as well, these are some of the current stats. And you might not believe these are past, like you can find any stats that show similar to this right now anywhere in the world. I'm just going to let you see these. Really what you're looking at right here is between 40 to 55, 57% of these individuals are either extremely depressed, extremely anxious, extremely stressed, or extremely lonely. And this is, again, the farthest end of that spectrum. So there's others in these surveys that still say that they're lonely, but not extremely lonely. So the word choice here, I think, is really important. So knowing all of these things and kind of having some of this context takes me back to our scripture, right? If we're handing off a faith to the next generation and honoring our legacy that came before us, as we see in All Saints' Day, and moving them towards that legacy going forward, what kind of a faith are we handing off? We need to give them a faith that is strong enough for them to tackle all of these big things that maybe we didn't experience when we were growing up as well. And so as a church, there's a few things I think that we need to take to heart and kind of how we need to be as a church, right, to serve this next generation. Number one is that, believe it or not, we need to have a plan. Plans are good. Not all the time we feel like we want to have a plan. We've got this all figured out, and so if we don't have everything all figured out, we can't start, right? Couldn't be farther from the truth. You got to start somewhere, think small sometimes, but you got to have a plan for what's next and how you can serve not only just the children and the youth in our churches, but also the parents and the families in the church, right? You got to have people. You have to have people that show up. You have to have people that aren't just, the same. I know growing up, we had this same lady. Her name was Miss Kathy. She was always in the nursery. She was the only one that was ever in the nursery. And so I've got this memory of Miss Kathy in my mind, but I don't have a whole lot of memory of a lot of the other people that went to my church because I didn't have people that showed up, that poured in and spent that time. And this can be people of all ages. Miss Kathy was a retired teacher, like so many people that are in children's ministry are, and loved having Miss Kathy around. A church has got to be willing to pour the resources into this. You've got to be able to have things that are helpful and practical. Thankfully, my office will give you a ton of free things, which is great. So if you guys need free things as a church, please come to me. Sean knows where to find me. Brittany works in my office, for goodness sakes. We can get you all kinds of great stuff. So we love that. And that means that putting financial resources of the church and the priorities of the church toward that are valuable, right? Families is the last thing. If we're going to be a church for the next generation, we've got to have families that when they come in that door, that we know that we are ready to receive them, right? We've got to have that space available, as I see my kids putting pumpkins together right there, which is great. Because believe it or not, when kids show up to a space, when parents show up to a space, they know immediately if you're ready for them or not, right? Like it is very apparent if that's the case. So if we're serving these families, we also need to be able to serve these families in a way that we kind of help shape the family of the next generation as well. And so what that means is we need to help parents find ways to incorporate it or faith into their everyday lives, into every single moment that is, whether that's walking, that's talking to each other at meals, in play, in conversations, bedtime, car time. How can we continue to serve families so that faith becomes just a regular part of our conversation, that we are not afraid of the two things to talk about politics or religion? We cannot be afraid of it anymore. That needs to be done, right? It just needs to. On top of that, we need to help them because, honestly, like if you've got kids that are here, maybe you'll have 40-ish hours with a kid per week. That is kind of what Orange, the big major curriculum provider, has kind of told us, is that you get maybe 40 hours a year with a kid in the church. That's it. Because if you're taking out holidays, you're taking out all these things where kids might be sick, you might be gone, you might be moving, doing all these things, you have 40 out of those 50 weeks. And if you only have 40 hours to spend with a kid inside the walls of the church, that means the countless hours you spend with them outside the church. And how can we continue to support them there, right? On top of that, we need to help them grow together throughout the seasons by serving, giving, family devotions at home, serving those people in marriages as well. And really the key here is to make your church your kids' church, right? Do you guys know how important it is when you finally have that moment where your kid is like, oh, that's not church, that's my church? We had this moment actually, Kara probably can remember this with Adam, our youngest here, just a couple, like last year, I think, driving home. We're lucky in that our church is pretty much like right across the street from our house. And driving, and for, the past, it's like, yeah, church is over there, whatever. But we're driving past, and he's like, oh, hey, look, it's my church. And the warmth that you feel when your kid is like, oh, that's my church, because he's had people that have poured into them there at the church, that language and that choice to say my instead of like a or the or just church in general, him internalizing that matters. So that changes our whole outlook on life going forward. So if we're talking, okay, church, we're talking family, and after that you kind of break down to the person of the next generation, right? So what does that mean for us here inside the walls of the church? That means that we need to be praying for our kids and our youth, and not just like the vague like thoughts and prayers for our kids. I want you to get specific. What is the kid that in your life or you know of that's in your classroom, that's maybe a colleague's kid? Who specifically can you be praying for and lifting up? Okay? So we need to make this a personal thing. So who in this church, who outside this church in your community can be praying for? Presence. Let's show up for them. Like, we need to be here. We need them to know that we care, and that there is a system of support. Love seeing, talking with Craig and everything beforehand, and seeing Rosie get passed around a little bit by the people here in this church. That is wonderful. What more ways can we be supporting the kids that aren't, just incredibly quiet babies, by the way? Like, my God, complete, like, for real, like, insane. It's wonderful. And so you love to see it, right? Gifts. Whatever gifts that we have as a church, how can we use that to support these kids? So that means, I was at a church a little while ago that there was this guy that was part of the United Men's group there at the church that was like, I can't help kids out, but I'm really good at smoking meat. I was like, sweet, how can we use this? And so this guy now, every time that there is any kind of like kids or youth event at the church, this guy and his team of like Methodist guys just comes out and they smoke a bunch of meat for the event. You don't have to actually work with kids to work for kids, right? Service. So let us serve them. Again, not everybody that is works directly with kids needs to necessarily work with the kids directly to be in Next Gen. And witness. Let us share with the world the amazing things that we know to be real and true, and not be afraid to talk about religion or politics with our young people. I want to take this to one last thing before we go, and that is to talk a little bit about baptism and what that is, right? So I've got two kids that were both baptized, and when my pastor, or actually it wasn't our pastor the very first time, it was the second time, they asked my wife and I and the church some questions about our own faith and our commitment to raising up our sons. And then they asked a series of questions to the church as they made a commitment to raising up our sons in the church, including the one that you see here. So when I say get specific, now is our time to get specific. We don't have a baptism here today. We do have this lovely remembrance. But I'm going to have you all think of that one kid, that one youth in your mind that you feel that tug from God today, right? That you feel in your heart like, okay, we need to be praying and thinking over these people. And we are actually going to go through together, and we are going to read this baptismal covenant together today. And I want you to be thinking about that individual in mind. This is not just a kid that's up here like, oh, cool, he's got the water splashed on his head, he's baptized, all the things. We're getting specific here today. Okay? So, as a church, I'm going to ask this question, right? And then I will have you all respond with me, right? Okay, here we go. Ready? Will you nurture one another in the Christian faith and life, and include these persons now before you in your care? With God's help, we will claim the good news and live according to the example of Christ. We will surround these persons with a community of love and forgiveness, that they may grow in their trust of God and be found faithful in their service to others. We will pray for them, that they may be true disciples who walk in the way of peace. Sir, it's quite the commitment that we make, right? that we commit to walking alongside of these people. So if we are going to have more hope for this next generation in the church, for them to grow and be competent, good humans, fighting for justice, caring for the least of these, and having a strong faith that will help them withstand anything and have that grit, right? Then here we are, right? Right here. It's our job to raise them as a community. It's our job to pass on that legacy, and it starts with us having our own faith, right? It starts with us raising them up to have their own faith, so it's not just their parents' faith, but they can internalize it. And it's part of our covenant to them, to God, and to the church as United Methodists that we take them into our care to raise them up. May it be so.